right, you're listening to Hawk Talk. I'm here today with Anna Tobias. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on. So I assume the day you're born, you're just an immediate competitor. You're figuring out like how long your labor was versus someone else, how long you rushed out, like from the beginning, right?
Right from the get-go. No, I don't think
Yeah.
so.
So let's take it back. Where are you originally from?
Originally, I was born in Doncaster, England. Lived there for 12 years before I moved to America.
Nice. And those first 12 years, like, were your parents athletes, competitors? Like, how was your sort of early childhood? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in a sailing family. Like my entire family has sailed. Um, and wasn't really ever like forced on the competition side as much. It's always, I think, just been there like lingering under the skin. I learned how to sail because my parents, when I was very young, rebuilt a 40-foot wooden yacht, gutted it and rebuilt it. And that's what we spent our summers on growing up,
Nice.
sailing up to Scotland. And so I had to learn how to sail more from a safety point of view. So if something happened to them, like my brother and I learned so that we could control a boat. And then we got into some smaller boat sailing and got a little bit, actually, I'll be honest, I hated sailing for a long time.
Yeah. And how old were you when you started the sailing process? Like, you start.
I've been sailing since I was like 2 years old, like on boats at least since I was two. And then, when I was in my elementary years, I swam, but I think that was just something to do. Like I only sailed in the summertime, so it was just like something to have me do to take my energy away when after school.
But you never really liked it, huh?
I'd never liked sailing, not until I was like 11, 12 maybe. And then swimming, I used to like swimming a lot. Yeah.
Got it. And so what changed? If you like your whole like young childhood, you're resisting this. Was it just like you didn't have a choice? Your parents wanted to go sailing, so you're going and you just kind of made the best of it?
Yeah, so like I said, they never forced me into racing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed going on the boats with them, but I never enjoyed doing it by myself for one reason or
Uh-huh.
another. I'm a big wimp when it comes to cold weather, and I think that probably played
Yeah.
a massive part in it growing up, because it was never really warm in England, right? Like even a warm day in England is not a warm day.
Yeah.
And so when I moved to America, I moved to Toledo, Ohio, or Perrysburg, Ohio. I started sailing on Lake Erie in the summer, and I was like, wow, this is like warm. It's fun. I was quite good relative to the other kids in the area. Like I would win like some of the races. And, when you're in like that 10, 11, 12-year-old range. So 12-year-old, I started winning races. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. I like this. And that's where my competitive side of sailing started coming out.
Nice. And right around that time when you moved to the US, you said, right?
Yeah.
Where did you end up?
We moved to Perrysburg, Ohio. And then I sailed out of my yacht club was just across the border. It's called North Cape Yacht Club, just across the border into Michigan. So we sailed on Lake Erie.
Got it. Yep. I was going to ask. So yeah, because Ohio immediately wouldn't sound like much of a sailing community.
Right.
Nice. And so you came over here in that really, did that elevate it? Did that start getting you more into it? Did that become your thing? Like at what point did you really go like, this is something I'm going to double down on?
So it kind of became my thing in the summer times, not so much in the winter time. Obviously it's freezing up here in the winter. And so in the winter, what did I do? I like dabbled in sports. Like I tried basketball and I wasn't very good. I didn't really like it. So it wasn't until like so back up. I was watching the 96 Olympics and was watching a medal ceremony. And I was like, that's really cool. Like one day I want to win a gold medal. And so I told my parents,
Yeah.
like, hey, this is what I want to do one day. And they're like, oh, okay, sure. But didn't
Yeah.
really know what I wanted to do it in. Like at the time, it was probably, I was thinking, oh, maybe sailing, because that's really the only sport that I would consider that I do. But it was never
Yeah.
really like, it was there and then it kind of got pushed to the back. And then, I did my sailing in the summers. I did okay. I did great locally. And then we'd go to like national events and I'd be like middle of the fleet at best. So it was a bit like, oh,
Yeah.
well, maybe I'm not that good. And then in high school, I got into swimming again and cross country and track. And so those are kind of like my other major sports that I focused on a lot before.
And do you think those contributed to sailing at all? Like, did that help you with when it came times for summer and sailing, or was it complementary or just another thing you like to do?
I think it was just another, like it got me fit, right? Like I got in great shape.
Sure.
It got me, it kept the competitive edge going. And I think it just started pushing me like on the competitive side of like, hey, like if you want to be good, like stop practicing, start like pushing yourself towards
Yeah.
something. And so in sailing, I think, yeah, it was like I saw these people when I went to a national event. I saw these people like being good, and I'd have glimpses like, oh, I could be there, but then I'd make some stupid mistake and like fall back. So it was kind of like always like a little tease, like, hey, you could be there. I was in shape, so that was a huge benefit and helped me out a lot. And then I think going into my senior year in college, I had to decide like where I was going to go to school and what I was going to do in school. And I got a couple of scholarship offers for running and sailing. They don't offer scholarship. So it was, do I go sailing or do I go running? And I was like, I don't want to spend 4 years of college running. I was like, sailing sounds way more fun. So I
Nice.
ended up choosing to go sailing for college.
And when you went to college, was your thought that you would pursue this as a professional? Like in high school, were you like, I'm going to be a professional sailor? Or was it like, I'm going to go to college, do this for fun, but I'm going to focus, I don't know, what degree did you end up focusing on?
So I wanted to be an accountant. Like
Uh-huh.
I loved
A lot of aspirations.
I don't know why I like took accounting class. I had a great teacher in high school. I loved the class
Uh-huh.
and I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I don't,
All right.
obviously.
Shout out to that teacher though, like to be able to take a
Yeah,
kid and make them fall in love with accounting
accounting
is
of all
impressive.
things, right?
Yeah.
So loved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to school and I was like, I want to go to a good sailing school. I'm not that good, but I want to go to a good school. So I narrowed it down to like 3 schools that I think I wanted to go to. And then two of them had accounting programs and one of them didn't. So I went to one school, checked it out, liked the school, but it wasn't really a good fit for me, like location wise. And they didn't actually have accounting. Went to the second school, loved the location. They had accounting, didn't even visit the third school. I was like, that's where I'm going to go to school.
Nice. And which one was that?
I ended up going to Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia.
Nice.
Mhm.
Awesome. And during that period, like again, was your mindset like, I'm going to probably get out of here and be an accountant, or was it, I'm going to go pursue this sailing thing? Because you said you didn't find yourself that good. So was it more like, I want to have fun with this while I go to school?
Yeah, so I wanted to go and like be as good as I could be, but
Yeah.
like sailing's not a cheap sport. And
Yeah.
like my family, we're not like super wealthy. So it wasn't like they would just be able to like support me right out of college just to keep going sailing, right? So it was one of those like, right, let me get through college, get as good sailing as I can. If I can go to the Olympics one day, that would be amazing. But I also I also wanted to be a CFO of a big corporation. That was another goal.
Yep. Nice.
And so that's kind of really what I went into college, like focusing as like that's what I'm gonna end up doing, probably that or like tax law.
Uh-huh.
And then and sailing is what I did. And if something came of it, great. But like I said, it was so expensive that like I wouldn't have been able to do it unless the changes that happened. I wouldn't have been able to do it right out of school.
And so when you started training at that school for sailing, I guess both, was accounting everything you thought it was?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it all the way through.
Yeah,
It was
that's awesome.
hard, but
Yeah.
I really did enjoy it. I don't know if that makes me nerdy, but I like the math problem
Nice.
solving things.
I mean, probably, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think,
No, I
the
mean, I think
term nerd has changed a lot these
it's
days. Yeah.
it's one of those things we all need, right? Everyone needs accountants.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so it was, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed all of it. And taxes were my favorite classes for some God, I don't know why, but like I love those classes.
Awesome.
And then, but I had my freshman year, I had an amazing senior class above me. And so I was able to learn so much from them all as a freshman. I just got my ass kicked every day in practice. And it was fantastic. Kind of put me in my place, but it taught me a lot about how to train and what I need to do to get to where I want to be. And then they all graduated and left. And so that kind of opened up a bunch of spots on competition team. And I was able to sail, I think from my second semester sophomore year through my senior year, I sailed every competition weekend there was. And we have 2 seasons. We have a fall and spring season. So I sailed a lot.
Yep. And how was that balance? Like in school, you said you were sailing every single day?
Yeah, you had Mondays off, but we'd sail 6 days a week during season. Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, you get, your winter vacation and summer vacation stuff. But other than that, you are sailing 6 days a week while balancing your schoolwork. And
Yep.
I assume trying to have a little bit of a social life as a college kid.
A little bit. I had a double major and a minor. I worked part-time at the school athletic gym as well as sailing. So, but like I hung out with the sailing team a lot, right? Like that was my social life. So, between once I got my schoolwork done, I was living with sailors. So it was hang out. And if you got to go out to the bar, great. If you didn't, oh well, if they'd be back soon, you can hang out with them when they're back.
Yeah. And so, did you enjoy that? Like in that process, was that like, did you feel like you were in a zone where you were studying what you wanted to, you were getting some work and you were getting to sail? Like, was it just like, was that pure joy and happiness that was happening? Or was there any sort of struggles in that? I'd love to know more about how you felt about it.
Yeah, so at the end of my sophomore year, I think it was my sophomore year. It was a lot. Like I had a lot going on between like trying to balance two majors, a minor, working and sailing. And that was the first semester that I'd sailed all the pretty much the whole semester. And I got really burnt out and was like my grades were fine. I kept my grades up. I wouldn't dare let them drop because my parents would have killed me. And not that it wasn't like I didn't do okay sailing. I just like wasn't mentally into it anymore and like didn't have the fire. And it was like as shitty as it was at the time, sorry, as bad as it was at the time, like it was one of the best things that happened to me because it put everything into perspective and it really kind of taught me like how to actually balance everything because as soon as like there was any inkling of like that sort of coming in again, like it allowed me to rebalance everything to get it going. And I've been able to use that for the rest of my life, using that
Yeah.
burnout to be able to figure out how to keep everything balanced and fun and enjoyable.
That's awesome. Got it. And so, when did you realize you were pretty good at this? Like you mentioned that the seniors really taught you as a freshman and you got to all this competition, but being in competition and winning and starting to realize you're top notch, like when did that start to kick in?
I won my first single-handed national championships as a sophomore, and I was like,
Wow.
"Oh,
Okay.
like, cool, like, I'm not as bad as I maybe thought I was." And then from there, it kind of I don't know, I'm kind of the sort of person that, like, I think like most people, right? Once you have something good and it builds your confidence, like, it just kinda keeps going
Yeah.
and going and going, and I think that really helped me a lot in college sailing, and then kind of it restarted when I got into the international scene. Like I had my bad event, kind of put it all in perspective. My next event was good, and then it kind of like the confidence
Yeah.
built me up through it again.
And so going to that, so you graduate college, you said you double majored and had a minor?
Yeah, I double majored in accounting and decision sciences, which is like logistics, stats, and computer science
Yeah.
stuff. And then my minor was in music performance. I played the cello,
Oh, nice.
and
Awesome.
but yeah,
Renaissance woman.
you were.
I said a Renaissance woman.
Hmm. But I want to say it was the end of my junior year. They changed the boat that was in the Olympics for the 2008 Olympics, and it went from a boat
Mhm.
called the Europe Dinghy to called now the Ilka 6. So still women's one person boat, but a totally different boat. And that decision that the Sailing Federation made kind of changed my path, like right then and there, because the one boat, the Europe boat, like that was expensive. It cost a lot to do that campaign, and there was no way I could have done that financially. The Laser or the Ilka 6, my dad had a boat that I kind of borrowed and then kept and then sold. So like, but like I didn't have to buy that boat, right? Like it was a much lower cost entry into the sailing. And because of that, I was able to, right out of college, being a broke college kid, I was able to actually go in and start Olympic sailing because of the boat change.
Wow. Was that the intention or what, why they changed the boat?
I'm gonna guess it had something to do with like finances and like making it more inclusive for more nations. Like the advantage of sailing
Yeah.
in the Olympics is that we have so many nations that participate in it. And
Yeah.
when money races do start become an issue, then obviously you're limiting a little bit the depth of the fleet from different airlines, different countries. So yeah, I think that was a big factor. But don't I'm not totally sure that's accurate. Seems
Yeah. And so
logical.
when did you graduate? So when did you graduate college? What timing was that?
2005, I graduated.
Okay. So they announced it right around then, you said, about the 2008 Olympics, we're going to use this boat.
Yeah.
And so you came out, graduated. I'm sure most of your, I guess not the sailing team, or maybe, but a lot of your peers are like going to get their first job out of college and all that. Did you go like, I'm going to go figure out how to just focus on this, or did you get the job as well?
No, it actually just went down. So the guy I was dating at the time, he was a senior my freshman year, so he'd already graduated and he was doing Olympic sailing too. So I moved down to Fort
Oh,
Lauderdale, and we just started training right then and there. And so I think I graduated, I moved down to Florida, and then short like a week or two later, I hopped on a plane and flew to Germany for my first international event.
wow. And so how were your parents about all this? Like, were they always supportive? Were they always like, go for it, you've got something? Or was it were they a little bit like, oh, you're moving to Florida with your boyfriend to go sail? Interesting. Like, how did that come across?
No, they were well, I don't know how they actually felt. They let on that it was okay. They were
That's good.
no, they believed in me. Like I'd shown enough potential, I think, in college, and then a couple of the domestic events that I'd done, that they were like, okay, yeah, like maybe she could do this. And I think it's one of those, like, I was young. If there was a time to go do it, like that was the time to go do it, right? Like I think once you get into a career and you start making some good money, to go back into, like, to quit and to go into Olympic sailing and not make anything, it's not
Yeah.
not necessarily the most, like, enticing thing to do, right? So, yeah, so it was a good time to do it. They were supportive. They said, "Yeah, like, if you're gonna do it, go do it." They supported me the best they could. Like I said, I took my dad's boat, and he didn't complain too much about it. So,
Yeah. Perfect. And so you go down, you start working on this. You said Germany was your first competition.
yeah,
How'd it go?
not good. I got my ass kicked.
Yeah.
I think I got
And
22nd or something, and I was like, "Ooh, that's not great."
and did that create like existential doubts, or was it just like, bad things happen, that sucks, but I'm gonna keep going?
No, it was a bit of like it was the first time I'd ever sailed an international event. So it was like
Mhm.
part of it was like, whoa, like what is this new scene that I'm on? Like, okay, the fleet's good, but I had like some good races. I just didn't know how to sail a fleet like that was that good,
Yeah.
that deep of a fleet. So it was just a good learning. The hard part was that the other American that was sailing, Paige, she was ranked number one in the world, and she basically kicked everyone's butt like all the time at the beginning, because she'd been sailing the boat a lot longer than everybody else. So she was just really, really good. So she was like winning
Yeah.
everything and making the rest of us look really bad. So we were all like trying to play catch up with her. But yeah, so it was it was cool because I saw what the international Olympic scene was like, and it got me
Yeah.
really excited and motivated. And like I said, I had a couple really good moments where I was like, okay, like cool, I can be up there if I practice and get just a little bit better on this.
Nice. And so, yeah, I mean, even 22nd, you're like, just to be hanging with that group of people, I've got to imagine like there's some, unless you went in there with the expectation of beating them all,
Right.
like first time, it's like, okay, I hung out. It wasn't good, but
Yeah.
now I can make progress.
Yeah.
And you were saying, I think earlier, your second race that went really well, right?
So not really well, but it went better. So
Oh,
the next event was, where'd I go? From there, I went home and did some training at home. But then the next international event I did was, it's called the University Games, and it was in Turkey, and I got the silver medal there. And that was
I'd say
cool
that's
because
really, I like how you downplayed that.
it
I'd
was
say silver's pretty, that's really well.
yeah, it was good. It was a lot smaller of a fleet than like the fleet I'd sailed to get
Sure.
in Germany, but it was cool because
Yeah.
like some of the girls that had done really well at the German event were there, and I was like right with them. So I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
this is cool. And then from there, I actually went straight to the European Championships in Croatia, and was friends now with uh, the Australian sailor, and we roomed together and started training together and pushed each other quite a bit. And so that event, I moved up and I got 8th. And so that was kind of like the start of the progression,
Yep.
and then wrapped up the year with a 3rd place at the World Championship. So it was kind of like a good intro year to the whole scene.
Yeah. And you mentioned the finances. How do you pay for all this? Were your parents supporting you through this, or like what actually finances you being able to be around different places in Europe and going through all this?
Yeah. So I mean, my parents helped a little bit. They gave me a couple of grand, but I think, but a lot of it is private fundraising, sponsors. When you make
Mhm.
the national team, back then we got some decent money. If you were like
Uh-huh.
top 3, top 5 in the world, um, nothing to like live on, or anything like that. But
Yeah.
you could pay for travel and housing and stuff. But I say back then my annual budget was probably $120,000 a
Yeah.
year. Um, Now the boat that I'm sailing, we're closer to 250, $300,000 a year. So it's
Uh-huh.
quite a big increase.
Yeah. And so, and that was funded through, as you said, being on the team as well as some sponsors
Yeah, mostly
and stuff.
sponsors and private donors. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. And how did you approach that? I got to imagine because like you just want to go sail and like the money part doesn't sound like it's the motivator for you. So how was that aspect of it, of like going and sort of meeting with sponsors? Did they come to you or did you really have to go seek people out? How was
Yeah,
that
you
part?
did a lot of emailing and getting a lot of no's or no responses, right? Like, and there was multiple ways you could approach it. You could just get really dejected by it, but I think part of me was able to be like, okay, like this is part of the job, right? Like, so yeah, I get to go sailing, but what allows me to go sailing is money. So, as much fun as I have on the water, like I'm putting, yeah, my 2, 3, 4 hours in the gym and on the water, but the rest of the day, be a professional and like do some work to get that done.
Yeah, love it. And so you placed third. Were you already eyeing the Olympics and assuming you would be able to go before all that, or was that like did that have an effect on that?
No, like I said, the other American girl, Paige, she actually won that world
Yeah,
championship. So I was
yeah.
closing the gap on her, but she was still winning everything at that point. So it was going to be a
And
tough
was it is it
battle.
only one, I was gonna say, is it only one representative of the US and that
Yeah.
got it? So and so tell me how the next couple of years, because that was 2006,
That
right?
was 2005, and then
Okay.
after that, 2006, yeah, we just training heads down, keep working hard. Instead, I kept closing the gap on Paige to the point where we would like flip-flop events, and then I had a couple more wins, and really it came down to our Olympic trials. We were both ranked like 1, 2 or 1, 3 in the world going into our Olympic trials. And then and our Olympic trials was a domestic event with 22 Americans. And so it was a 9-day event. We did 16 races over 9 days, and it was who beat who the most, basically.
Yeah.
It came down to basically the last day, the last couple of races. And fortunately, I'd sailed a slightly better event and was able to beat her by a couple points and qualify for the
Yeah.
Olympics. And to be fair,
Nice.
like it was one of the most miserable regattas of my life, the most miserable 9 days, because it was so stressful, because it really was just a back
Yeah.
and forth battle for that amount of time. But it
Yeah.
was probably one of the best things that prepared me for the 2008 Olympics.
Yeah. And so did that feel like because it sounds like you weren't really sure if you were going to do that. Like you loved the Olympics, you said in watching the 96 Olympics, but it was also not necessarily like the main, like you wanted to go, but it wasn't something you were necessarily gunning for until you started to realize you were a little better. Once you hit that, like what was that feeling like that you knew you were going? Like, did you feel like you had like checked a life accomplishment to get out there? Or was it kind of like, were you just heads down about how am I going to do this now? Like, how did that?
So I've always said that like I wanted to go win the gold medal. So like winning
Mhm.
the trials was yeah, it was great. It was exciting. I didn't touch a boat for like a month afterwards because I was like, no, no more sailing. But it was like a stepping stone along the way, right? Like the job wasn't done. Like just because I qualified,
Right.
I wasn't totally satisfied yet. Like I wanted that gold medal. And so that it was
Yeah.
basically okay, now the real work really starts.
Yeah, and did that change your training, or did you do like how did that affect kind of the next step? And what was the time period between the trials and the actual Olympics?
Our trials were in October and the Olympics were in August. Like
Okay,
I said, I didn't touch a boat probably until December again after the trials. And then I started the training. The training didn't really change, but really all it did is it just took like a distraction out of it, right? Like the distraction of the trials being
yeah,
there and that weight hanging over you of, okay, you still have to qualify. So even though my mentality through all of it is like, this is just another stepping stone along the way, it was still a stepping
yeah,
stone that needed to be stepped on and passed over.
yeah. And you kind of had that. You were able to have that laser focus though on like this is all that matters now. Like I'm
Yeah.
going for this.
Yeah.
Got it. And so how'd it go? How were the Olympics?
Olympics were amazing. Absolutely surreal. The and China did such an amazing job of like putting it on. Like, I think everybody watched their opening ceremony and it was so impressive.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
being in the stadium watching them light the torch was like this sounds silly, but like watching it, like it still kind of makes me like emotional, but like kind of everything went quiet as I like watched the torch light and I was like, okay, we're here, let's go do it. Like to me, like that was the moment where I was like, all right, now go do your job. Like everything you've
yeah,
done is for this moment. Now let's go do it.
yeah,
That was incredible. And so then after that, it was just go home, go back to our venue and do like go sailing. Like do like at that point, you're not getting any better. You're not going to learn anything, right? Like the work's been done. Now just go execute.
yeah.
And I just had fun. Like I had fun sailing. Like
Awesome.
it was a great time. I was relaxed. My coaches were awesome. Yeah, and we just had fun, and it worked out.
Love it. And how'd you end up doing? I actually don't know the outcome was.
I won the gold medal at that one.
You did?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
It's funny. I did look up some bios and stuff on you, and for some reason that one piece was missing on what
Interesting.
I found. I even had the trial place, but so you won the gold medal. So, on that note, did you expect to, or was it like, was that special? Like, I guess, where was your head at? A lot of people, obviously, to achieve at that high level of athleticism, you almost have to expect the win. So, like, were you there where you're like, I know I'm one of the best, if not the best, standing here? Or was it like, I hope I do this right?
No, I was ranked number 1 going in, and I'd won the test event the year before, so I knew it was possible. But sailing's
Mhm.
sailing's such a sport that it's not like you can just, try a little harder and you'll pass everybody. There's so many
Yeah,
factors, outside factors that come into it that, you just really have to be executing your A game and not make a
yeah,
mistake and not have any bad luck as well. And
yeah,
so yes, like I knew there was a potential that I could win, and that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't focus on the overall result. I just tried to focus on each race at a time and, you know,
yeah,
I guess minimize the points that I was collecting.
yeah. Got it. And did you, when you won that, did you think you'd go do it again? Like, you wanted to come back in 2012?
Yeah, I immediately started training again.
Did you?
I didn't know what I was just totally going to sail in the next Olympics, right after the first Olympics, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it again. Committed right away to going into Olympics. Committed to going into the sailing. I think I took a little bit of time off, and just
Yeah,
dabbled around in both match racing and laser sailing. Played
yeah,
to figure out which one I wanted to do going into 2012. But yeah, I was definitely
yeah.
going back into Olympic sailing.
And what did you do? And you did end up going to the Olympics in 2012,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. And so, what did you end up doing for those 4 years? Like, that's such a long time for most people to like have this another goal, and you've done it. Like, were you just competing along the way and looking for other competitions so that you could stay fresh? Like, how did that process work? And how did those competitions feel? Like, did you find, whether it's the world championships, et cetera, were those just as important, or were you just kind of like another stepping stone?
Yeah, so I had the similar approach. I did change boats. I changed disciplines. So I started sailing match racing, which is one versus one instead of like sailing everybody at the same time. So it was a totally
Yeah.
different game, and it was the first time match racing had been in the Olympics for women. So it was all of us were learning from scratch. So it's a super fun discipline, super fun sport or version of the sport to do. And so it was like 3.5 years of just learning this new thing and having fun and beating each other one on one.
And does the gold medal from the Olympics, did that get you a bunch of sponsors and help? Like, was it, I don't want to say easy, but it didn't lift a lot of load, so to speak, after that to let you keep focusing?
Sailing's not that popular in America. So, it did open some opportunities. It did open some doors, and we did have a fantastic sponsor step up and sponsor us for the 2012 Olympics. And then most of my sponsors from the China Olympics carried over because of that. But, it's not like gymnastics where they get like $1 million
No.
endorsements and stuff like that. So, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so you focus on 2012. Did you have an idea that you would be going for 2016 too? Or what were you thinking going into 2012?
So going into 2012, I want to say we were ranked number 1 again, so we were the gold medal favorites.
Yeah.
We made a mistake in the quarterfinals that kept us out of the medals, so we got
Uh-huh.
eliminated, got 5th. And my intention was to continue on to the 2016 Olympics, but I took the loss really, really hard after the London Olympics. Started sailing for the Rio Olympics, but just knew how much it took, how much work it took, and how dedicated you had to be. And I didn't have the fire inside to do it. And since I was sailing with somebody else, it wasn't fair for me to push on with I don't want to say lackluster, but like without that fire fully flaming. Like I didn't want to do it. It wasn't fair. So I
Yeah.
retired and took some years off.
And what caused what was the mistake? What was the thing
I mean,
caused it?
there was a couple, like, you try and pinpoint it on one thing and it's never one thing. It's like, if I did this in this race, that would have been different. This and this race, that would have been different. But, just we lost in the quarterfinals, and I had one opportunity maybe in the final race of the quarterfinals. I had one opportunity and I did it wrong. Right. And it cost us.
Yeah.
Um, like that wasn't the only thing, right? Like if we'd won a couple other races earlier in the series, we would have been racing
Totally.
somebody
Yeah.
else, So I can't just say it was the one thing that did it, but it was just really hard because we were the favorites to go in there.
Yeah. And did it feel like you mentioned this a little bit ago that a lot of times the luck is a huge part. Did you feel like there was a part of that was just unlucky, like you were on your A game?
There was one incident in the Olympics that was it was definitely bad luck for us, but I wouldn't blame that as the reason
Okay.
why. We
Yeah.
created every situation that we were in. We did everything that we
Yeah.
did, so I wouldn't say we just had bad luck. We just didn't play to our A game.
Yep. And it's hard. I mean, it's when it's you get this 1 week or so and 4 years of training and you got to just perform. We've had a few Olympians on the podcast that have alluded to that idea of like, what if you get sick?
Yep.
We all get sick sometimes. Like that 1 week's the week you get sick. Like it's those things that like you just need that 1 week in 4 years to be perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
So you decide to pull out, as you said. What did you do next? Like, did you take a break and a breather? Did you go get a day job? Like, what was the plan after that?
So I actually retired from sailing, like officially retired, pulled myself out of testing pools and everything, and got into CrossFit and actually started doing CrossFit in 2011, leading into the London Olympics. So I switched my fitness training to that, and then was working.
What got you into that? You had a gold medal in the Olympics. Like, why'd you want to switch your training, and what was it about CrossFit?
Because I was bored, and CrossFit was so much fun. We were staying with some friends, and we're like, hey, we were training in Chicago, and we had staying with some friends, and we're like, hey, we need a gym to go to. Where do we go? And they're like, come check out this gym that we go to. And like they introduced us to it, and I was like, oh my god, I did a 10-minute workout, and I'm so sore, and it was so much fun. Like this is what I want to do for my fitness. And then kind of found out that like there's the CrossFit Games and like you can compete in it, and found a gym in Florida, in Miami, where we were doing a lot of our training, and met my now husband, but who was coaching there at the time. And he did a really good job of being like, okay, like focus on the Olympics, like get fit and stay safe for those. And then after that, then we can talk about competing in CrossFit if you want to. And so when I retired, I fully dived into competing in CrossFit and surprised myself at how quickly I was able to, like, I surprised myself when I qualified for the CrossFit Games the first time. Like, I didn't think that was going to happen.
And was that right away? Was that like 2013?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so, yeah, it was because 2 years into trying this new exercise regimen, I mean, obviously you were in shape with everything else you were doing, but did you, I guess, expect that? Like, as you were thinking about making the switch, were you like, oh, I have a new sport that I'll be top in the world at? No worries.
No, didn't expect it at all. Like, he saw the potential. And he's like, yeah, it didn't surprise me when you qualified, but I was like, I did what? Like, I qualified? How? So that was really cool. And, it was something new. It was a nice new distraction, a new sport. And I just kind of went with that for the next 4 or 5 years.
And was that fully dedicated? Like you did this full time and trained and competed? And I know there's the CrossFit Games, but are there other like regional games and all those kind of things going on throughout too, or is it really like train all year for one big event?
Yeah, so there are other events. It's definitely, the sport's definitely grown since when I first got into it. There are definitely other events around the country, around the world that are big events, and it's getting more and more professional each year, which is awesome to see, and it's incredible. It's what these athletes can do. But so there are a couple of events that we did, but I didn't really do too much to not overtrain. Really, there's a season. It starts in February, March, which is like the first qualifying series, and then it goes to like the next event, and then it's the finals. And so that was kind of like the main focus: train to build for the beginning of the season, and then ramp it up for the games.
Got it. And how did you end up doing, like, over time? Like, were you number one in the world in CrossFit, or like how did you get the gold medal in that too?
No, I did the individual open division 5 times. I got 2 top 10 finishes, and then after that I did the Masters twice, and I did win the Masters twice.
What's the Masters?
Like, so the Masters, it's like age groups, right? So once I turned 35, I went into the Masters division. You don't have to. I just chose to.
Yeah.
And so the 35 to 39-year-olds, I think we had 20 people one year and 10 people the next year. Like, it's the top 20 in the world, and then the top 10 in the world. And so I won those the 2 years I did that.
So you did get the gold medal. Got it.
Well, yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah. And that brings us, when did you stop doing CrossFit competitively?
Honestly, the pandemic kind of shut it down. So I was
Yeah.
campaigning for the Tokyo Olympics. So I did get back into sailing in 2018.
Oh, okay.
And then, but at the same time, I was still competing in CrossFit. And so I did the Masters in 2018, the Masters in 2019. And then we lost the trials at the beginning of 2020. And so I did the qualifiers for the CrossFit Games, but it was either right before, right after COVID. It must have been right before COVID hit. And so then everything got weird. And anyway, I ended up qualifying that year, but they canceled it for the age group, obviously, because everything was canceled that year, just about. Um, and so that was really the last year I stopped doing it at that level. Just kind of wanted to give my body like a break physically, like pushing it hard and getting older and older. And then the last couple of years I've gotten back into it a little bit, some masters competitions, but
Uh-huh.
nothing crazy. More for fun
Yes.
now.
Let's say two more questions for you. Number one, what's next? What do you think is coming down the pike for you?
So right now I'm currently campaigning for the Paris Olympics. So sailing again.
You are?
Yep.
Nice.
So sailing with the same girl, Paris Henkin. So she went to the Rio Olympics. So
Uh-huh.
we teamed up again. We're sailing for that. So our trials are in.
A real quick question on that. What brought back the passion for it? Because you obviously got out, like, I don't want to do this. I'm not fully in it. How'd that come back?
Honestly, well, I like the sport. Like I love the sport now.
Of
I
course.
always want to be a part of it somehow. Like I was the first person in 20 years, first female in 20 years to win a gold medal for sailing in the US. And we haven't won a gold medal since in guys or girls. And I don't want that to be the case. Like it's cool that I was the last person, but I want us to win some medals, right? So I want to, push and try and get us a medal. And if I can't, I want to push Team USA to be the best they can be, so that whoever does end up going can bring home a medal, right? Like I don't like the drought that we're in, so I want somebody, whether it's me or somebody else, to bring home a gold medal.
And last question for you. What would be your advice to someone that wants to pursue their dreams and like perform at the top, whatever that might be, whether it's an athlete, a musician, entrepreneur, like what's something you either wish you heard or did hear that helped you get through the tough times, so to speak?
Honestly, one of the things that has helped me the most, especially in my competition, but even in now, like I own a gym, so I run a business too full time. And a fellow Olympian said this to me, and it applies really for sailing. But like, think of yourself as a game piece, all right? And you're in the shaker, and they throw it out on a board, and you land where you are. It doesn't matter how you got there; you are where you are. How are you going to move forward from there? All right, and I think that applies in anything, right? Like in sports, like whatever just happened doesn't ultimately matter because you are where you are. You can't change it. And the same in business, right? Like you make a bad decision, okay, you made it, but how are you going to fix it? How are you going to move forward with it? And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that has like stuck with me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Anna, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on Hawk Talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me.